Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Nation80 podcast. This is episode 22. We have a lot going on. We're going to get into some Black Adam stuff. We're going to talk about Gotham Knights. Got some Silent Hill news around the way. DC got a plethora of things they're going to do for Black History Month. Man, I really jacked up that word. And then and we'll get into some other things. But I am with our co-host Mike. Mike, what's going on?
What's going on? Back for another episode of the podcast, man. I'm excited to talk about some of these topics. We had a good week here.
Yes, we sure did. There was a lot going on, and we talked about. I sent you a couple headlines earlier in the week about some stuff, and then some bigger stuff came out. So there's been a lot of news this week. All right, so Mike, before we get started into the headlines, let's talk about what we've been playing, reading, or watching this week. So why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So as far as watching, I've actually. So I think last week I said I was watching Lord of the Rings. I'm still continuing that. Still a good show. But this week, I don't know what happened. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the debut of the Black Adam movie that made me want to go on to HBO and start watching some DC stuff. But I found myself, you know what it was? I saw a trailer. That's what it was. I ended up watching or rewatching Titans, the TV show. And because I didn't give it much love back in the day. It's almost been 3 or 4 years ago, I guess now. Because they're already on, I think, season 5 or season 4. And so didn't give it much love back in the day. And I saw a trailer for their newest season. I was like, man, this looks pretty quality. Let me go back and watch this. So I'm almost done with the first season. And after rewatching this first season, man, I feel like I kind of messed up the first time because this is actually a pretty decent show. Like, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's actually, I'm finding it very entertaining, and I'm excited to continue that show. So Titans definitely has been something I've been watching. As far as playing, I have been playing mostly Madden, but there's a game that I'll probably post sometime at this week on our channel, and it's called Death Road to Canada. And it's meant to be a co-op game. It's like a zombie survival game. And if any of y'all have ever played Oregon Trail back in the day, it's basically like that, but with zombies. And it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. You get to drive around in a car and with your group, and you make all kinds of decisions that determine what kind of food or how much food and supplies you got, and your morale and everything like that. And then you also make decisions on where you go to raid certain facilities like grocery stores or, gas stations, and there are zombies around. And what's really cool about that game is that it's not like okay, you die and then you can get healed, or you die and then you just restart. It's you create your own character, and if you die, that's it. That's a wrap. So it makes you really think like, okay, just tone it down. It's like it's a nice little indie game, 8-bit, 16-bit video game that I had a lot of fun playing. I played it this morning with Elias for about an hour and a half, and it was fun. There was some very tense moments, but definitely a game that you should check out.
Mike, so we were talking off mic about this game, and so when you were saying that, once you die, are we talking like XCOM, where
Yep.
you create yourself, you die, and then
that's
you got
a wrap. There is no resurrection. It is just and then you can, if you have other people in your group, you can take over that person. But your character, the one that you create, once he is dead, he or she is dead, that's it. That is a wrap. That is it. So, Elias and I made it, I think, an hour into a run. And as I said off mic, things just went awfully wrong. And Elias just he was getting eaten. And he's yelling at me. He's like, Mike, help me. And I said, I'm sorry, but I gotta go. And so I just left him.
I remember back in the day, naming all of the characters in like, for example, XCOM, and then having it say Rodney has died, Brandon has died, and it was kind of morbid because you're like, oh my God, I'm getting my
right.
family slaughtered out here.
Right. and it's not like it's got like a beat 'em up aspect to it. But you can't just go around just hitting people with whatever multiple times. It's you actually lose stamina, and depending on the weapon that you have, will determine how strong or not. You can pick up something as small as a fork, or something as large as a meat cleaver, or a golf club. And there were a few times where, yeah, it's faster to swing the golf club, but sometimes that golf club snaps in half. So there are a lot of
Mm,
good decisions in there. There are guns that you can pick up, but like any good zombie game, the ammo is scarce, and you only use it for certain situations. So, like Elias and I, he had the shotgun, I had a pistol, and we tried to only use it when we were facing hordes of zombies where they were just coming at us. So I'll post up some gameplay of that this week where people can check that out because that was a fun game. That's a very fun game.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, so this week, I went back to the library and I got volume two of Lone Wolf and Cub. So I've been going through that omnibus. TV show I've been watching. I've been trying to finish up She-Hulk. So kind of the same vein we talked about, I think, last week. She-Hulk is pretty good for what it is. There's not much action to it, and it still has that feel of filler and very little action. And I think as I was watching She-Hulk, I realized that's part of the problem, right? Because we're so used to these action-packed movies that the TV shows kind of throttling down make it a little bit harder to consume sometimes. But so far, She-Hulk has been pretty good. I got like two more episodes, and then because I think episode 9 just got released this week, which is the season or series finale, which I don't recall. I see some people say season, I see other people say series, in which again we already talked about. That's one of the things that's kind of a letdown because why, if there's not going to be another season, why stick around to, or why rush to watch the first season? Um, on the game front, I've been playing Witcher 3. I had this game for a while. I just never gave it the time it deserved because you know how it goes with Steam. You buy one game, you play it for about 3 hours, and then you buy another game just because of how much stuff is out there. But it's been fun playing it, and getting really deep into that game. I never Steam, I mean, excuse me, Witcher 1 and 2 do not work on the Steam Deck, so I'm just going with Witcher 3. I think Witcher 1 is all keyboard. I don't think, of course, there's probably like a exe you can get, or some sort of patch you can get for a controller, but I'm just not interested in doing all that for that one, especially because I know even though there's that, the graphics ain't what they are because that game came out so long time ago. And then I don't even think they had actual audio for the acting either. But Witcher 3 is pretty dope. I just hope it's not like Fallout 4 where it's just so much to do that that you end up just losing interest in the game because you're like, all right, another mission. I just want to get to the story and get out of here,
Hmm.
and all that stuff. But I do like it. I do like it. And it runs well on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, that's a game I definitely wanted to check out, at least when it came to the Switch. Um, that was one of those impossible ports that made it
Hmm.
to the Switch and did very well. Uh, However, I guess the biggest problem with it on the Switch was that even though it ran really well, it was at a visually not as impressive as what you get, of course, on a PC. But then the same thing as far as the Steam Deck. So definitely wanted to check that out until I realized that there's spiders in the game, and I was like, okay, maybe not. So
Yeah, I totally understand that. I totally forgot about that part. So yeah, you might want to fall back on that one. All right, so moving on, let's get into our first headline. We're going to start off with a little bit of movie news. And first thing we're going to do is start off with Black Adam. So this past week, uh, Dwayne The Rock Johnson was able to knock out 67 million, or almost probably 70 million now, at the box office. And this is literally his best opening as a solo star. And I was when they say that, I was kind of thinking like, I know Super Pets just went number one, but I guess that would be him co-starring with Kevin Hart. Or Jumanji would be him with Jack Black, Kevin Hart, and so many others. I can't think of a solo movie that he's done recently, um, just by himself, other than this. But according to Deadline, from what we have here, Dwayne's in the making dream project, uh, long in the making dream DC project has paid off for the People's Champ, as Black Adam has conquered a hot 67 million opening, the best domestic box office start for him as a solo star. And then, of course, it goes on to get a quote from The Rock. The success of Black Adam is truly a dream come true. We've been working towards this family goal here at $7 for 15 years, applying every bit of experience we acquired over the years to help bring this project to life. Our goal with this film was to establish several new characters in the DCEU, which would give us the opportunity and success to really expand the universe. But most importantly, we want to take care of the fans. All right, and so the pick made 23.7 million on Saturday, back those by the 7.6 on Friday, and another 26.7. I guess they're doing estimates here, of course, because they don't have Sunday, but they're saying that Black Adam is definitely a hit, and in this post-pandemic time, I would say those numbers are a hit because I don't believe anyone's hit the 100 million. I have to look at Doctor Strange because I'm not 100% sure what they got on opening weekend. But I think this means we're getting more Black Adam in the future. Mike, what you think?
Yeah, I mean, not a surprise. They pretty much said this was going to happen a few weeks ago, based off of what they've been tracking from surveys and everything like that. They were anticipating a huge weekend for Black Adam. I think what's more impressive is that apparently the reviews have been pretty good for the movie. And if you look at like some of the content creators that got to see it on the premiere the week prior, and I just watched a video, a non-spoiler video about it this morning, and the consensus seems to be The Rock did his thing. And so and part of the process, so I think we talked about how Ryan Reynolds, we are talking about Spawn and everything, and then how that's just, who knows if that movie's ever coming out. And then we talk about Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool and what he had to do, as far as making a hype video and everything like that, going behind the scenes. And apparently, The Rock has been doing the same thing. This movie's been in development for 10 years, and he's done a lot of things to help this along behind the scenes, including basically saying, "Hey, look, you guys don't even have to pay me this kind of money up front. Um, I just want to get this thing done the right way." And so, yeah, tracking wise, they knew it was going to be a big one. They said this is the biggest DC movie premiere out there. And so I think the fact that the critics, and not even so much the critics, but just the people, I think they even said in that Deadline article that the Rotten Tomatoes score from the people is like 90%. That's higher than Joker, than the Batman. Those were at 88, 87%. So I'm excited to see this movie. I I've been secretly hyping up for this movie. I love The Rock and I love his movies for the most part. Um, and I've heard people say, even if you don't like The Rock, like this movie, the way he laid it down was just amazing. So, um, when you got guys who are that passionate about a character, about a role, it usually ends up turning out really well. I mean, you look at Robert Downey Jr. and him playing Tony Stark. I don't think anybody could ever imagine there being a different Tony Stark. I can't imagine, because Tom Cruise was originally in the run to be Tony Stark. I can't imagine Tom Cruise as Tony Stark. But I can sure as hell imagine Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. And so that's what it appears to be the same thing for The Rock, that people are saying, like, The Rock did his thing. And apparently, this movie is, of course, is very action heavy, uh, but it just barely passed its PG-13 rating. Like, it had been R for the most part during its development, and they just squeaked it under, toned it down just a bit to get it under the rated R rating to achieve that PG-13. And so I'm excited. I really wanna watch this movie now, and, hey, this may be one that I will probably watch in the theater.
Yeah, I still have like I told you last week, I was slated to go at the end of the week and go catch at the theater, and it didn't work out due to work. But I do intend to go to the theaters this week and check it out one way or another. Um, yeah, but I'm super hyped for this. Uh, Mike, I don't know if you kind of remember, but Batman v Superman back in the day went through this kind of like development hell. Like a matter of fact, think about that. If I remember correctly, around the time of Batman v Superman was when the first news came out of The Rock rumored to play Black Adam,
Mhm.
right? And from back then, we assumed that it was going to happen. Then it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and then I remember around the time of, I want to say, Suicide Squad, the jump the gun version, or the or somewhere around there, another DC movie that came out, maybe Aquaman. The Rock had finally came over to Warner Brothers and started having like real conversations about filming. And then filming took so long, you know, we thought it was going to be one of those things where it just didn't seem like it was going to happen. Then we got the trailer, and then the trailer kind of left you like, okay, well, it looks like it's going to do something, but we
Right.
don't know what it is yet. And then I must admit, even though Black Panther 2 is king right now on television as far as commercials, that Black Adam trailer, to me, they did a very good job of giving you enough to get you interested in going to the theaters. Because every time I saw it, I was like, yeah, I gotta go check that out. I gotta go check that out. Right. So I well done by well done by DCU. I'm interested to see where they go from here. Mike, I don't know if you've been staying away from it, but do you know what leaked from the movie?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious what the leak is. I
Yeah,
didn't see the leak myself. I just heard
neither have
about
I.
it, and you can
Put
casually browse the internet to see what
You
the
could put
leak is.
two and two together.
Yeah,
Matter of fact,
so
I was gonna say all these news sites couldn't wait. They were literally, they were literally, they couldn't wait to drop it. So
right.
like even before the movie could even finish the weekend, they already had it posted, you
Yeah,
know.
and so that leak makes me really excited because of where this is going. Because this does take place in the DCEU along with Justice League, and I didn't think about this until again I had watched this guy that I typically trust online, and in one of those trailers, Black Adam says he's the strongest person on the planet,
Mhm,
which is still true. And when you see what the leak is or the cameo at the end or whatever, because that other person is not from Earth, right?
mhm,
And the fact that they did that, I am super hyped about where they could possibly go with this. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know, you know, Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam is an anti-hero in this one, so he's not necessarily good. He's not necessarily bad. Um, but going forward, is he gonna be a bad guy? Is he gonna be a good guy? We really don't know. And then I'll just go ahead and say it because it's not like it. Like I said, it's pretty obvious at this point that you have Henry Cavill back as Superman,
mhm,
and that's another character. That's another actor to me who's really passionate about being Superman. And
mhm,
even though, depending on who you ask, right, they either loved or hated the Superman movie. They either loved or hated Batman v Superman. They either loved or hated Justice League. I'm of the ilk that I loved Superman. I don't mind that he killed Zod in the end. I think his character needed that. Um, Batman v Superman. That just depends on what day of the week I wake up on.
Hey,
um,
me and the extended version and I was one of the first ones to say when we were talking about back in the day
mhm,
that Batman v Superman, the original one I saw in theaters, wasn't the greatest.
right.
But the extended cut, because Zack Snyder doesn't do anything under 2 hours, to me is
Was
perfect.
much better. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And same thing with
Hmm.
Justice League. That
Hmm.
initial Justice League that we got was terrible.
Yeah. Josh Whedon should have
uh,
never touched it.
should have never touched it. He put his Marvel spin onto it, and it was terrible.
Yep.
Um, and I agree with what The Rock said. You know, he's not trying to be like Marvel. He gives all due respect to Marvel that he's not trying to take anything from Marvel whatsoever. But he's trying to accomplish is a DC thing, trying to be their own thing. And I think
Hmm.
that's what the attitude going forward needs to be. Okay.
Hmm.
The MCU has their formula, you know, action, some laughs and everything like that. Cool. All right, but DC, especially the extended versions of Batman v Superman and Justice League, have had a darker tone. Have had a much darker tone. In fact, the only movie that I think that we've seen that hasn't been that dark has been Shazam, which is not, which is fine because that's his character, right?
Yep.
Um, so, and now you got Black Adam, and they are talking like this is not a like The Rock does not really crack any jokes in this
Yep.
movie, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what he's got that's what the supporting cast for,
yeah,
and it makes me very interested to see Shazam 2, right?
yeah.
Because eventually Black Adam and Shazam, they also have a history
Mhm.
as well. So I'm curious to see that as well as see where Superman goes on. And there has been rumors of behind the scenes of the talks of a new Superman movie, but we'll see how that goes in the near future. All
Yeah,
right, Mike.
like
So
you, I'm excited. So I'm ready for Black Adam.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And congrats to The Rock. All right. Uh, our next headline here is our boy Harrison Ford, who's already, I think he's done filming Indiana Jones 5, which is just nuts to think about.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is set as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross for Captain America: New World Order. Will star opposite of Anthony Mackie. It's official. Harrison Ford will be taking over the Marvel role of General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, beginning with Phase 5 title Captain America: New World Order. He'll star opposite Anthony Mackie with Shira Haas, Tim Blake, Nelson, and Carl Lumbly also among the ensemble. Ford's Captain America casting had been the rumor mill for some time, with the anklers Jeff Snyder among them speaking of it late. While the film's plot is still being kept under wraps, Mackie will reprise the role of Sam Wilson, who assumed the mantle of Captain America uh, after you watch the show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Um, so if you don't know, also he is taking over for William Hurt, which they don't mention in this because William Hurt passed away at the age of 71 late last year, I believe, or sometime
Mhm.
last year. And this pick is slated to be released May 3rd, 2024. Uh, so as you can see, well, that kind of gives us some interesting things to think about if they're bringing back General Ross, because there's some questions. Will we now see the Red Hulk, which could be an
Mhm.
interesting concept? I also something that I got interested about because I heard it in this article is Carl Lumbly is going to be in the movie, right?
Mhm.
My boy who played the Mantis, and he was the old version. I think he's Isaiah Bradley, correct? um, from the Captain America. So I would love if they kind of
Oh
just
yeah,
touch
you're right. Yeah.
on the Isaiah Bradley Captain America before they go, somewhere along the line. Like if they open that up a little bit, that'd be kind of dope to see. So super excited for that part. As far as it being Harrison Ford, I don't have an issue with it. I believe Harrison Ford though is in his late 70s, early 80s. So I don't think this is going to be long term. So, and when I say long term, I'm saying he might shoot his scene for the next couple of movies and that's it. But I don't see it going I don't see it going too far in the future, right? But who knows? Um, maybe Harrison Ford has found the fountain of youth, and he's able to. I know he's a very active individual, so maybe he's able to take on the rigors of certain things. But like for example, I was surprised to see him back in the day when he showed up in Star Trek. I mean, Star Wars. Why I say Star Trek?
Right.
But
Right.
And then he broke his foot because something landed on it, and then had to halt shooting for a while. So I hope that they give him a easier role, and that he can kind of chill out in the MCU for a little bit. Mike, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to feel about this. I love Harrison Ford. He is a Chicago-born actor. He's actually 80 years old. Um, and I noticed because he and I share the same birthday, like as far as we're both July 13th baby kids or whatever. And so I've always loved Harrison Ford, and um, I'm I- I'm a little leery about it. I feel like, man, he's 80 at this point. Um, rest in peace to William Hurt. I thought he played a great General Ross, and I would have been excited to see him in this role just because he's a little bit younger and a little bit more fit, at least, or seemingly more fit. Um, but I don't. I guess the fact that they're going to lead him into Thunderbolts almost certainly guarantees that we'll see the Red Hulk, because the Red Hulk is an important part of the Thunderbolts. So with that said,
Mm,
I can see that Harrison, it's not going to be. It shouldn't be that stressful physically of a or demanding of a role for Harrison, because I imagine he'll do his talking points and he'll be great at that. Uh, and then they'll CGI to the Red Hulk. Maybe it'll have his likeness. At that point, I'm excited to see it. But the fact that I mean, he's 80, and Thunderbolts, I mean, the Captain America New World Order doesn't come out until 2024. Um, so when those Thunderbolts come out, um, that's
mm.
not going to be, I guess, 2024 for that one as well. So yeah, like you said, is it gonna be a long-term thing at 80? I don't know. Uh, so it's just one of those things. We're being introduced all these moving components with no clear direction as to what the end game is, right? Um, and so I'm hoping at some point, we have some context to this. Like, okay, we're getting a new Captain America movie. We're getting a Thunderbolts feature, like, but what's the end game? Like, how is this going to feed into the end game? You know, and so I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to get hyped up for this news. I love if this was Harrison Ford, maybe at the same time when he had come out to play Han Solo in Star Wars, I would have been a little bit more excited. But um, at this point, I'm just like, well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully something good comes out of it. Like I said, I love Harrison Ford. Um, I just think he's a little too old right now for me, at least. And without having any context to what the end game is for Thunderbolts or for the Captain America New World Order, then I'm not sure, man. I'm very just let's see what happens with that.
Do you think because of the success of how they connected everything before, that them doing offshoot movies, like let's say Thunderbolts, let's say if it's just a one-time movie, makes it harder to get hyped for?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think you're right. I think we we're so used to knowing what the end game was, okay? No pun intended with Avengers, but like we knew that everything was coming to an end with Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. Okay, that's what we knew it was coming down to. And with this, I was talking to a colleague at work about this. Like, we just don't know anything. He was actually asking me about the next Eternals movie. Like what's going on with that? And I'm like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Celestials we got to deal with. We got Kang we got to deal with, the multiverse. Um, and then there's all the I feel like I guess I feel like if anything, all these like side projects are kind of like the side issues of a main event in the comic books, right?
Hmm.
Like if you have like Secret Empire, which is given the title of the new Captain America uh, movie, kind of makes me think they're trying to do like a Secret Empire type deal. And so you have your main event, which is like 8 to 10 comics long, and then you have all your side issues that are associated with that main event. And it feels like the TV shows and some of these other movies are side
Yeah, side filler, whatever you
stuff,
would like
you
to
know,
call it.
and unless it's yeah, yeah, and unless it's like it is how I treated it as with the comics. You know, when we read Secret Empire back in the day and did that podcast, um, I was all about the main event, but I think you actually read a lot of the side issues.
Yes.
Um, I just couldn't do it, you know. Whereas in Civil War, I read Civil War, and I read a lot of the side issues for it. So I'm not, but with both those events, I knew what was going down. Okay, Civil War was okay. Somebody's got to win at some point. It's either Tony or Steve Rogers, right?
Hmm.
With Secret Empire, it was okay. We've got Hydra taking over the U.S. and we got Sam Wilson and his crew trying to, get rid of Steve Rogers, Hydra, Captain America. And so we knew what was happening. We knew what the end game was going to be. And I don't know what the main event is here.
Yeah.
I want to know what the main event is. Like, give me something for the main event. Don't just keep throwing out more side issues. So I don't know. It's just hard for me to. I think, like you said, I think you hit on the mark. Because of what we knew before with the first, phase, 1, 2, 3, 4 movies, we had a main event. And with this, phase 0 and on, like I don't even know what the main event is. So it's hard for me to get hyped up about any one particular thing. And the only one of that I am hyped up about is probably Black Panther.
Yeah. And it was Blade until Blade got suspended.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will admit, Ant-Man is kind of getting up there because I saw Jonathan Majors the other day, and
Mm.
Jesus, that dude is huge. Like massively huge. Like every time I look at my fat ass, I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, Mike, I was going to mention Marvel has to be upset that they already did Civil War because now they got all these properties back and they
Right,
could have did Civil War and maybe even introduce some of these characters
right,
in a Civil War situation.
right.
But now they're trying to make something work, most likely what we believe is Secret Wars or some sort of multiverse type of situation. And you know what? To be clear, I think what's happening is they are trying to maybe etch out the details of how to make this all work. And I think, um, like you said, they're kind of throwing fillers, but it kind of sucks because Marvel can't really throw out pet projects,
Right.
right? Because of our anticipation to see what comes next from the MCU, right? So, like,
Mhm.
compare, like, this is where I have to give DC its credit for. If they want to, they'll come out with Deceased, and they'll and you'll be like, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? And DC will look at you like, well, no, that's your fault for thinking it, but it's attached to something. But we're
Right.
just throwing this out there just because we thought it'd be kind of dope. Whereas Marvel, everything is supposed to be all encompassing. Even though Werewolf by Night came out on television, I guarantee you, someone went, okay, how does this go to the rest of the MCU?
Right.
Right? You know, and and literally that's the thought every time we watch an MCU show. That's what happened when we watched Thor, because when we watched Thor, we were like, okay, something's coming, something's coming. You know, that's why you sit there for the end credits. And then when there's only something particular for that, still that same movie and not pointed towards something else, then you're like, hold up, when you gonna give me something, right? And I think the worst part about it is they haven't even announced a movie that's going to give you that gem about, hey, this is coming,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I think that's what makes it worse. I think we were like, okay, well, Doctor Strange 2 is coming. This should give us the gem that we need to see. And I think it's also we're waiting for them to drop the big breadcrumb, right? They've been
Mhm.
giving you these little pieces, but we want that one breadcrumb that confirms that we see Nova, or that we see Adam Warlock, or that we see something that makes us go, "Oh, I know what storyline they're using."
Right.
and
Right.
I think that I think if I was a casual, I would be fine. But knowing what I know about the comic book world, I'm sitting here with my licking my chops and almost like, you know what, forget it before because they haven't given me anything. So we'll see how things go. We'll monitor that as time goes along. I would assume since Captain America and Thunderbolts both come out in 2024, that he'll probably film that concurrently, and that might be the end of it. All right, moving on to games. So we talked about this last week, and I'm just gonna say, even though that everything that came out was saying this is going to be disappointing, there's always that slither of hope that they just prove people wrong, and that even though there's footage and there's gameplay, you're like, okay, they come on, they probably did like over 2 weeks of all nighters and they got it right. They had to get it right, right? Oh no, they did not get it right. And what I'm talking about here is Gotham Knights. Now, it has been getting beat up since it's come out. I watched the IGN review on it, which I think is very good, the video review. And they went on to mention about the fact that, okay, I never expected a groundbreaking story, right? That's one thing. But they just mentioned about the controls and how the only good time to play is kind of co op. And they mentioned all the bugs and crashes and all the things we kind of expected to see what happened. And then I guess story does play a bit of a part because they were mentioning parts about how Robin goes from being this badass to just being this scared little whiny kid at parts, and you know, Red Hood doing his thing, and there's so much going on in this game. But here's a article from Kotaku. Reviews for Warner Brothers' first Batman game since 2015, Arkham Knight, dropped today. They are not reassuring. While a few critics like Gotham Knight just fine, many were underwhelmed by its story, bored by its repetitive missions, and report issues of frame rate drops, which is to be expected because they only kept it at 30 frames per second, in other aspects of the game's performance. It sounds like the loot centric multiplayer brawler is middling at best, a major disappointment after such a long wait. US Today called Gotham Knights a content checklist, while Games Radar accused it of not knowing what it wants to be. For all of its potential, the game falls flat, reported NPR. IGN gave it 5 out of 10, and GameStop gave it a 4. The Metacritic score currently sits at 69, with Digital Foundry's John Lyman tweeting the game doesn't look nearly as good as Rocksteady's 7-year Arkham Knight. While some critics praise the story, the button mashing in between seems like a real chore. All right. So, Mike, go ahead and start us off here.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. Like you said, there are times where you hear something and about a game that is going through all these issues and developments, and then at the last second they pull off something beautiful and amazing. And I did not think that was going to be the case with this, but to see how bad it failed, like just how bad it failed, it's very disappointing, and you could bring up like Cyberpunk, but to me, Cyberpunk had so much going on, and it's a PC game that you didn't really expect to be smooth at the launch. But this is a Batman game, and on the PS5, where you've already said you're gonna cap its frames at 30 frames per second, and you still can't get it to run smoothly at 30 frames per second on a next generation console.
Mhm.
Are you kidding me? Like, I was hoping. I was really hoping. Um, and and again, I won't place the blame solely on the development team. I'm sure they really worked hard. Uh, and a lot of this has to do with the culture these days with how games come out. They all these games that come out for the most part, they don't come out complete, and you always have to have a day one patch, or you got to wait a month for a patch, or 6 months for a patch, or in the case of Cyberpunk 2077, you got to wait for a whole mess of patches.
Mhm.
And so I hate when games come out this It's just, why should I pay if you're gonna ask me to spend $60, $70 on a game, it better be complete. Like, it better be complete. Um, so I think that's disappointing. I've heard the combat is just not good. I've heard the customization and the creation things are just not good. They have a day night cycle that doesn't seem to make sense. Like, you have a day cycle, but you don't actually go out to do things during the day. Like, everything's done at night. Okay, so then why have a day night cycle? Like, I don't get it. So um it's not just a technical aspect, it's the creative choices that they've made that have just seemed kind of mind-boggling. And I'm one that has always been a Batman fan and loved the Batman games. You know, Batman Arkham Asylum was a revolutionary game, and it changed how action adventure games were played, and especially with the combat system involved with that. You know, you look at God of War, they have a lot of that is owed to Batman Arkham Asylum, you know, and you know, you look at Spider-Man, a lot of that's owed to Batman Arkham Asylum because that was like the OG, that was the originator of that style of action adventure. And so to go, you know, three or two more games strong, and then to show up with this, you know, even if the artistic part of it, you know, the last Batman game you introduced, you know, you roaming the city with the Batmobile or Bat Tank, right? And depending on who you talk to, some people loved it, some people hated it. But the game still ran smooth. Okay. Uh, so creative differences, creative decisions, whatever. But if the game can't run smooth at 30, we're asking for 60, and that's asking you to put 120 out there. But if you can't do 30 frames per second, a smooth, capped out 30 frames per second on the PS5, a next generation console, then what's the point? And it just lends more reason to not buy a PS5. Okay. Because this game's going to be on a PC, and I'd rather buy it on a PC, go through all those patches, and get to 60 frames per second them on waiting for to buy a PS5, spend $600 on a PS5, and only get 30 frames per second sometimes. Like, that's unbelievable. That's just, if you can't take advantage of the hardware, then what's the point? Like, what's the point? It might as well just be a PC exclusive at this point. You know, that's disappointing. That's a disappointing. Um, WB Montreal just gotta they really messed up this time.
Yeah, this game could have waited. Realistically, I don't know why they didn't.
Right. Like,
And
who was hyped to be like, give us Batman now? Like, who was hyped for that? Like, I love
yeah,
Batman, but not even I was like, man, I gotta have this game before Christmas.
yeah,
Like, who was hyped for that? I don't get it. Like, you're right. You're absolutely right. They should have. If you need another year, games
take your
get pushed
time.
back all the time. Give it another year.
Well, I think to be honest, and I don't think the same studio's doing it, but I think they just went and got Gotham Knights out there because their general focus is Suicide Squad. And so I had, matter of fact, last night, before I went to bed, I took a look at the Suicide Squad trailer and gameplay. They just released a new one about 3 days ago, so that kind of tells me the mind state is, let's get this out here because it's just not going to work the way we want it to, and we're going to put all of our efforts into Suicide Squad. And so when I was looking at that trailer, um, the story looks more polished. The the gameplay looks more polished, and this is just you know, a quick gameplay trailer and cinematic, but you can tell that that one's been given more love and affection, like the Arkham series, than Gotham Knights was. And the thing is, Gotham Knights, I don't expect it to be like Arkham, but this should have really, you know, had a lot more going for it, but it didn't. Well, it doesn't. Number one, and number two, with all these issues, frame rate issues, and bugs and stuff like that, it doesn't make any sense to just go ahead and rush this game out. They could have, and maybe it's just because Christmas around the corner, somebody will buy it. Like, for example, if it's out for like $15 around Christmas, it's probably going to be a buy for me. $15 to $10, $10 to $15,
Right.
and I know I'll buy it.
Right.
Just so that me and Michael can play it for an hour and then not play it again.
Right.
Right. To be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Yeah.
because like one of the shining things they say of it is the co-op, but it's almost like Mike. Back in the day, they were talking about the Avengers game, right? And I did all that footage for it as I was playing it. And one of the things about the Avengers game was that it was repetitive,
Hmm.
right? You kind of do the same mission over and over again. You fight the same enemies over and over again. And the only upside is that you're using the Avengers. And but by playing co-op, I think that's where it would shine, because then you feel like you're just having a blast with your buddy, in the game. So I think that's the problem here, is that number one, it does seem like, and that's crazy, because when you first saw the initial trailer, well, Batman has died, and now it's up to the Bat family to find out how he passed and to keep the mantle alive, right? And that seems pretty cool, and they kind of just dropped the ball on that, which it shouldn't have happened, because out of anybody, Nightwing is rich with stories
Hmm.
that you know and we talked about his first introduction of his solo book back in the day in Blunderhaven, a Bloodhaven, and there's so much more he can do if given the opportunity. And so for them to drop the ball on this, especially, sucks. But it also tells me two things, right? Number one, Rocksteady, where's my Superman game? Number one. And number two, how come it is so hard for them to show Batman on any type of media other than a movie? To be honest with you, right? Between you want to do sneak peek on Gotham and whatever Titans, had a little sneak peek of Batman and all this other stuff, to games. Like, let's get another Batman game out there. What, 2015? Like, and don't get me wrong, he was dope in Injustice, but why is it that it's so hard to get Batman, or Superman for that matter, on other media formats, or in games in general? But I digress. That's just me. It's like, why do we keep on? Why are you so? I can get Spider-Man almost anywhere, but it seems like they really hold Batman to the vest in certain situations.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I don't know if there's some weird licensing maneuvering, depending on what media it's being posted to. Um, but yeah, that's something I've never understood either. Um, I do want to mention that and I can't remember what contest this discussion was at. It might have been about TV shows and movies, but we had talked before about how certain studios will put more money towards one project over another.
Hmm.
And I think this is maybe what's happening with Warner Brothers, because they are publishing both Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights. However, it's two different studios that are doing it. It's two different developers. Okay,
Hmm.
so WB Quebec or Montreal is doing Gotham Knights, while Rocksteady is doing Suicide Squad. So I
There you
hope that
have it.
when people see how bad this game is, uh, referring to Gotham Knights, of course, that they don't put that same kind of view on Suicide Squad, because we're talking about two different studios. Okay, and Rocksteady, not that WB Montreal is a small studio or anything like that, um, but Rocksteady for sure has done uh, has done some stuff as well, and so um, I hope that Rocksteady really sees what's happened to WB Montreal, and they
They
and
got to
they
show out. They got to
yeah,
show out in the Suicide Squad game.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully they do. I really hope they do. There's a lot of different studios under Rocksteady, and they've all are very well known. So hopefully they can develop a game that is good. Like you said, uh, they dropped the ball with Nightwing. and they could have done so much other stuff with that instead, but they did it, and this is where we're at. This is what we got.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll see how things turn out. Eventually we'll play the game and we'll talk about it on the show. All right, so let's go in here into our last little bit of news. And after years of no Silent Hill, Konami has finally opened the floodgates. Beyond Silent Hill 2 for PS5, we're getting new games with Townfall and F, a movie, merch, and more. Silent Hill fans can finally rejoice. Konami has confirmed that after accidentally leaking some details earlier today, the beloved survival horror game Silent Hill 2 will make a return as a time PlayStation exclusive, along a bevy of other Silent Hill projects currently in the works. You can watch the stream. Well, that they showed a trailer of the game, and that looked pretty cool. The Steam opens up with an iconic shot of Silent Hill 2 protagonist James Sutherland staring into a mirror, wondering if his wife Mary's waiting for him. James walks through the foggy streets of a town before we see a cinematic montage of familiar sights, impressively rendered in modern graphics. And so the trailer confirms that Silent 2 Silent Hill 2 remake is going to be coming soon, as well as they gave us a little bit more information, and they gave us a glimpse of Silent Hill Townfall, developed by Observation Untold Stories creators. Uh, the details in that project is scarce at the moment, and then there's also chat of there going to be a Silent Hill film, but right now there's been a lot going on, and this means a lot because you know, back in the day, we got this quick preview of Silent Hill by Hideo Kojima when he was still a part of Konami, and kind of scared the daylights out of a lot of people and got them hyped for that game to get canceled, and then Kojima leave Konami. So we never thought Silent Hill would see the light of day. Um, I can't act like I'm the biggest fan, but I did watch the movie back in the day, and I did enjoy the first one. I think me and my wife watched the second one the other day, and didn't really make it too far in it because it just wasn't hidden like that. But I'm always down for a decent horror game, and Silent Hill does more of a, while it's supernatural horror, it's one of those games where it's not like Fear where you get ammunition at every turn and every corner. Silent Hill, you got to do some strategy and maneuvering in that. So um very excited for those who like the series. I personally haven't played a Silent Hill game since I joined the service. So, well, excuse me, after I left the service. So there's a difference in that. But we'll see how things turn out. Mike, what's your thoughts on Silent Hill news?
Yeah, it was I've actually heard this rumor for the last year. There's a podcast I listen to called Spawn Wave, or Spawncast,
Yeah.
and it's he's got a bunch of people on there that talk video games all the time, and one particular person on there has been, I guess, hoping, wishing for Silent Hill, and none of them thought that it was ever going to be remade. But I suppose that, especially with these PlayStation games, we're getting so many remakes right now. Um, and some of them deservedly, like the Resident Evil remakes. Some not so. Like we're getting a New Horizon remake. The game's only been out for 5 years. So to hear a new Silent Hill game come out is pretty cool to me. I be honest, I've never played Silent Hill. I've always wanted to, but by the time it got to that point, um, I was just like, well, I don't know if I want to do this type of game with outdated graphics and everything like that.
Hmm.
And that's the same way I felt about Alan Wake. But remastered Alan Wake, and so now I'm able to go back and enjoy that game. Um, Same thing with Resident Evil. I just never been or never made the time to get around to those type of games. And now with the remakes for that coming out, uh, or have already come out, I've always wanted to, or will be going back into that. So Silent Hill, that's why I would say, like, you have certain franchises in horror and you got your Resident Evil, you got your Silent Hill, you've got your Alan Wakes, or your Dead Space, uh, and so all of those, and Dead Space getting a remake.
Oh man, I
Um,
can't wait for Dead Space. I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know if you can play that game though, Mike, because I would think if they're anything like the guys before, they just couple spiders in that game.
right, yeah. So, and that's always a problem for me because I do have an arachnophobia. I find it very hard to play video games, um, even if they're not horror games. So like Witcher 3, I already know. Um, even Torchlight, which is a 3D, top down action adventure, has spiders that are no bigger than, my the palm of my hand, probably even smaller. And nope, 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 I'm done playing this game. More recently, Jedi Fallen Order, I had to wait until somebody heard my cries uh and made a mod for it so that instead of fighting spiders, I fight flame throwing stormtroopers. Uh there were a surprising amount of flamethrower stormtroopers in that game, and I was like, God damn. All
Mike,
right,
you know
well.
what's funny? And as I sit here and I think about it, as with you having arachnophobia, but I remember Spider-Man was your guy back in the day, which
Mhm.
makes it so interesting. You
Oh,
know?
it's perplexing,
Yeah.
and in fact, so I real quick story, I was playing at work the Spider-Man remastered game, and I finally get to the part where Miles Morales gets bitten by the spider. Or actually, I'll take it back before that, because the spider gets onto Mary Jane in one of those random hidden, recon missions. Um, and in that recon mission, I I was not expecting that to happen.
Mhm.
Because that's not what happens in the comics. It's always, oh, Peter Parker or Miles Morales are at some location where the spider gets onto them. So I wasn't expecting Mary Jane to be the vehicle for the spider. And as soon as it popped on the screen, I was like, oh, hell no. And like my colleague behind me was like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Yo, man, you might have to finish this mission for me, bro, because I can't deal with the spider." He's like, "I don't understand. You hate spiders, but you love Spider-Man." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, like, if they made Spider-Man like some of the Spider-Verse, versions where he actually looks like a spider, then I'd be out."
I was going to ask you the one where remember the cartoon where he turns into the spider, has the eyes and the eight.
Mhm.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
no.
assuming that one got to you, right?
No, I'm done. That's a wrap. That's a wrap, bro. So, yeah, no, so in general, like, I have always strayed away from those kind of horror games, even Resident Evil. And so, um I don't think Silent Hill is like that. I could be wrong. I will try to. I really do want to play this game. And if it happens, it happens. And then if it's only an hour into the game, then I'll just be done. I guess I played an hour of Silent Hill. Um, but if it doesn't happen towards the very end, then I guess I played 8 hours of Silent Hill. So I'm excited for it. I do kind of question. It does seem like, so they had like this little mini event, in which I want to ask Rodney, like, what do you think of
Mhm.
these? I'm starting to see this more often now. You don't have these big E3 type of events anymore.
Mhm.
Even like the console specific events are few and far between. There are more developer specific events. Do you prefer that over like an E3 type of experience, or do you like the developer specific events?
So there always will be a small place in my heart for E3 because it's something that I always wanted to attend. But I kind of understand because um, the biggest thing that comes to mind was back in the day when Xbox was like, "Hey, you're going to have to stay online all the time," and they caught so much flack for it for PlayStation to come around the corner and be like, "And you don't got to keep your PlayStation online," and it kind of like took the wind out of Xbox's sales for that year or the next couple of years because of that. Um, so I think by hosting your own event, especially remember correctly now. Microsoft owns Activision. Why would you do all that at E3 when you can now, you now have access to BlizzCon or all these the type of events? Why would you do it at E3 where now you literally have your own convention under your belt to set it up? It's why, and so on the gaming side, and it makes sense because the one thing that is unfortunate about E3 is that we look at Microsoft and Sony, and there's really nothing else we want to look at. And so a lot of games get lost because they don't get the attention it deserves at E3. It could be a great game, it can have some hype behind it, but it's just because those two were king, they don't get the respect that they deserve sometimes.
Mm.
So I personally am fine with um us slowly leaving E3. I hope E3 stays just because I think there's always some cool stuff that happens, but I don't have problems with these more smaller events because you see it a lot in comic books and in television now,
Hmm.
where other than San Diego this past year, Disney has E23, and they showed a whole lot more at D23 than they ever showed than they showed at San Diego. They gave San Diego a little something, but eventually D23 is going to take over, right? Um, DC had that great event during the pandemic, fandom, DC fandom. I say they should keep that going. I
Right.
think that was a better event because, like, man, I can't explain how hype I was because I believe they showed the Batman trailer. I think they showed Suicide Squad. They showed some other stuff that was coming out, and you were able to do it at your pace because it was all on YouTube. It was a live event, um, and I think that was a very cool thing. I really hope they're not putting that in the trash now that the pandemic's over with,
Mm.
or you're not necessarily over with, but it's died down quite a bit. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, there's I going back to Silent Hill real quick. Super looking forward to it. Um I can't wait to play it now. Like you said, it's updated and all this other stuff. And I hope they go back and take 1 and 2 and remake it to some degree, just like they did Resident Evil, so that we can get that as well. All right, Mike. So now that we got the gaming stuff out of the way, our project this week was American Vampire. It's been a while since me and you have read a comic book and discussed it on the show. And if for those who are new to the show, the podcast was based off of reading comics before, and we kind of got away from that because there's so much more that we get into, whether it's TV, movies, or comics and games for that matter. So uh we went a little easy because it was free on Amazon Prime and Kindle. And it seems like every Scott Snyder book is now free on Amazon, which is kind of cool. But I do wish they had a little bit more variety. So I went with American Vampire this week, and just to give a quick synopsis: the series imagines vampires as a population made of many different secret species and charts moments of vampire evolution and interspecies conflict throughout history. The focus of the series is a new American bloodline of vampires born in the American West in the late 19th century. The first of its new species is a notorious outlaw named Skinner Sweet, who wakes from death after being infected to find that he's become a new kind of vampire, something stronger and faster than what came before, impervious to sunlight, with a new set of strengths and weaknesses. And the series once goes on to track its movements. And we also get introduced to Pearl Jones, a young woman working as a struggling actress in the 1920s silent film industry when she is attacked by a coven of European vampires hiding in Hollywood. Sweet saves her uncharacteristically by giving her his blood, thereby turning her into an American vampire like him, in which point she seeks revenge on the classic vampires who attacked her in life. Now, this book is a team up of all type of sorts. Between you have Scott Snyder, the other portion of it is written by Stephen King, and then it's drawn by Raphael Albuquerque. And for those who don't know, Raphael Albuquerque, he is well known for the Lock and Key series, done with Joe Hill. And who was Joe Hill? Stephen King's son. So a lot of interesting pieces to this. And so we decided to read the first volume of American Vampire, which takes us to Skinner Sweet as we find out his history and Pearl Jones's history, right? So each book, except for I think maybe one or two, tells you two stories. They tell you one side of Skinner Sweet's past, and they tell you another side of Pearl Jones' past and how they intertwine. And so, like I said, it's based off of what in Skinner Sweet's time, it's based off a Western where he is an outlaw. He has a whole gang. They're out there robbing trains and stuff like that. And unfortunately, one of the trains that they rob is they rob a train that's full of vampires, right? The European vampires. That's another thing. So, like they said, the American vampire starts at a particular time, and that's when the European vampires came over to make their fortune in business, right? They're almost kind of, I would almost call them the Illuminati of sorts, right? They're coming from Europe, and now they're trying to take America by storm by getting into particular industries like the railroad and import business. In doing so, Skinner Sweet comes in contact with one of these vampires where blood gets into his eye. And the thought was that Skinner Sweet had died. But unfortunately, he had changed into a different type of vampire. And in doing so, he was, for years, he's found himself underground eating candy, I guess, really bad off candy. And he stayed down there until finally someone who went to try to get some memorabilia off of him, uh, treasure, what they call them, grave robbers,
Mhm.
went to try to go and steal his hat or some other memorabilia off of him. In doing so, they brought him out of the grave. And then going into another time, we talk about Pearl Jones, who's working three jobs and trying to make it in the silent film industry. And her and her friend Hattie are working on sets and waiting for the time to be called so they can become, the next best actress. In doing so, Pearl Jones catches the attention of one of the lead men of the silent films, who tells her to, hey, how about you come and hang out at this party, which is never good sometimes when it comes to these guys. And of course, he had ulterior motives as they use Pearl Jones at the party. Pearl Jones was used as food to take care of these vampires, right? And then we also see Skinner Sweet again because he's made it through time. He's made it from the late 1880s, 1800s to now he's in the 1920s. And so the whole book encompasses that whole timeline of how he's gotten to that way. And it's kind of cool because it's told from one of there was a U.S. Marshal who was trying to take out Skinner Sweet back in the day, and one of those guys ended up documenting the events of Skinner Sweet as he went through time, and so that's how we kind of get away how those two interconnect one way or another. And uh, Scott Snyder and Stephen King, for that matter, to me are great writers, and this is something that I personally think would look good in a TV show format. Nothing too long, nothing too crazy, but I think it could be done if it's done correctly, like on the HBO Max thing. But hey, they like reality shows better these days. So, Mike, what's your thoughts on what you read? Because I know you didn't get an opportunity to finish it, but for what you did read, what did you think of American Vampire?
Oh, I thought it was very engaging. The fact that you have Stephen King, I think everybody knows who Stephen King is. But the fact that you have him writing in a comic, along with Scott Snyder, who's most popular for writing Batman stories, I thought was pretty cool. And at least from a Scott Snyder, you know, when I read Scott Snyder, it was all DC stuff. And like I said, it's primarily Batman, to get to a point now where he's got these books that are a part of DC, and to have it go into such a different direction from what I'm used to reading was a real delight. And how you explained it was pretty cool, because you have the whole volume is written by each writer. Okay. And so you have Scott Snyder writing the present, and you have Stephen King writing the past, and there's the novelist who is basically telling that story from when he originally witnessed these events with Skinner Suite to what's going on in the present with Pearl Jones. And so what I think is pretty cool is that yeah, you have your traditional European vampires, and they thought that they were going to come over to the US and do their thing and whatnot, and they thought they had killed off Skinner Sweet, and they didn't realize what they actually made. They thought that when they killed him, buried him, put him underwater. Like they literally buried a town underwater because they did not think, and that's based off of their knowing of how they live and die, that their weakness is that if they're buried underwater, they cannot escape, period. They cannot be in sunlight, period. And so uh, they thought by doing this, they would be fine. And so they literally sunk a town, waited like 20 years, or I think it was 30 years, and they sent a
Mhm.
diver down to bring him back up and do just basically goes to town on him. And so it's kind of like this revenge story. Like I said, I'm like 70% of the way through. This is a 200-page volume, and uh where I'm at so far is like, okay, Pearl is gotten or is getting her revenge, okay, on the people that made her, which happened to be the same people that made Skinner Sweet. And as far as at this point, as far as we know, there's only two of them. It's just her and Skinner Sweet. There are these American vampires. And Skinner Sweet seemingly has disappeared and is leaving Pearl to do her thing, which is um, and what he has said is kind of hoping to help him out in the long run. And so it's very, very interesting dynamic. I don't think that this could have been done as a one shot from like the 1800s to the 1930s. If you just go through the entire storyline, I think it would have been I think it would have needed a lot of issues and a lot of books, and to finally get up to the end, it would be hard to keep your interest. But the fact that they did, you start off with Pearl Jones and what she's doing, and then you switch to uh, the past with Skinner Sweet and what happened to him and how he got turned, and then you go back into and you start to see how things are connected. Why are they doing what they're doing? And I think that's pretty cool. I've really enjoyed it. I love the artwork on
Yeah,
this book.
Raphael Albuquerque does an amazing job with I won't necessarily even just say horror books. It just his style of art works well and accompanies this book very well.
Yeah, and it
Um,
makes it feel very, like, serious, like, it's a very vicious world, it's a very real world, with lots of consequences, and to see what Pearl does to the actor that conned her into going to this party in the first place, what she did to that guy, you're just like, "Whoa, are you kidding me?" And so it's just it's crazy, what, Skinner Sweet does to the whole town after he wakes up, and he goes to town on some of the people that uh, made it happen for him to be buried underneath the basically a river that was dammed up. And so it was graphic, but it wasn't like overly graphic. It
yeah,
was more of a, oh man, okay, this is a vicious world, and that's coming from the West. You think about the Western culture and time period where it was already there's a reason why they called it the Wild West. It was already a vicious time. And I think with the art and how things were portrayed, there's the scene where Skinner Sweet, yeah, he gets caught, but he along with the help of his gang try to make their escape, and his gang are just killing innocent people, unarmed people, and while he's fighting, and while Skinner's fighting with the marshal, um, he tells him, "Hey, look," he tells him basically he already killed his wife by sending her a bottle of poison wine. Um,
yeah, I
it-
forgot about that. That
yeah,
was a that's cold blooded right
yeah,
there.
it reminded me of the movie, what was it, Seven with with Brad
Oh
Pitt.
yeah, yep,
You
yep,
know,
yep.
in the end when Kevin Spacey uh is has the box and Brad Pitt's like, "What's in the box?" and,
Yep.
and it's old girl's head. And it's like, oh man, that's what it kind of felt like because Skinner Sweet's like, yeah, I'm gonna take care of your girl. I already took care of your girl for you, this and that and whatnot. And I sent her a bottle of wine, and they the art panel of it is her getting this gift, and she's thinking it's from her husband, and he's saying, "Yo, drink this bottle because this is me showing gratitude to you, and I can't wait to get back to you." So she has no idea, and yeah, it was just it's a very engaging story. I can't wait to finish it. And I'm for sure to be going through the rest of these volumes because it's just engaging. It's so much different from the mainstream DC Marvel type of stories.
Yeah.
And you never know who's going to survive or not. And
So
so,
Mike, so real quick, let's let's do some, I'm gonna say rapid fire, but let's talk. Who was your favorite character from what you've read so far?
man, it's hard because I don't know. I'm gonna have to say Skinner Sweet, man. I mean, this is a guy that is a despicable, you know, uh, gangster. I should say gangster, but bank robber.
Hmm.
Seemingly racist, or
Yeah.
he's throwing out
He,
words like beaner and this and
yeah.
that or whatever. And I'm like, man, this guy's despicable, but man, he is a badass, and like his long game seems pretty legit. Like he doesn't seem all that smart, but even how he escaped, like the guy thought, he conned the marshal into giving him his quote unquote candy from his hat that looked like like a peppermint straw.
Hmm.
But it was actually a steel pick, and he was able to pick his way out of his restraints, and so and then how he turned Pearl, um, and just gave her some subtle hints. This is what we can do, this is what we can't do, um,
Good luck to
and
you.
that we're still finding out what is possible, that we're all different, right? And he's like, and then I'm out. Maybe I'll see you in the future, and maybe like what you do from here on out will actually help me out against these guys.
Hmm.
And so it seems he to me is the most engaging right now because of what he's been got going on behind the scenes, and especially how his past has been coming up. But I would definitely say him for sure.
Okay. So since you said him, I'm gonna go with James Jim Book, right?
Okay, yeah,
And he was the detective, a part of the Pinkerton agency, who was hunting Skinner Sweet,
right.
and he did everything in his power to try to stop trying to stop an outlaw. He did everything in his power. Unfortunately, he lost his wife through it. Um, there's some things that are going to happen to him later on in the book. I don't know if you got into it yet, Mike, so I don't want to ruin it for you. But he he does what a person is supposed to do, and he tried to you know make sure that he upheld the law. But there's some things that are going to get to him later on, unfortunately. That and he's someone with a troubled past because he was like, hey, I took out Skinner Sweet, we took out everybody else. I'm now retired. I'm out the game. I just want to go live my life. And unfortunately, you know how it goes. The game keeps calling you back.
Hmm.
Mike, who was your dumbest group or characters in this book?
I guess as far for right now, I would probably, man, it's either a tie between Hat or Hattie, who was
Hmm.
Pearl's roommate, or even like the main European guy, Bullock or Block. I think it's
Block.
Block.
Yeah. MD Block.
Um,
BD Block.
yeah, and maybe Hattie because Block had no idea. He's just going off of what he knows, right?
Hmm.
Um, and he's just reacting. Whereas Hattie, I I'm to the part where she basically betrays Pearl. Okay,
Hmm.
literally stabs her in the back, and Pearl's like, "Why? But why though?" She's just like, I'm not like you, this and that. And I'm just like, you dumb bitch. I'm like, you the main one that gonna get murdered now. Like I just
Hmm.
so now you're under the thumb of the Europeans, and now you got your girl who was supposed to be your best friend coming at you. So
Yeah,
yeah, that to be her for sure. Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. Hattie, you know, seemed like to be the dopest friend you could have,
Right.
and for her to, basically realize that she wanted to be a follower of vampires instead, and basically, envy. She
Right.
it was the basis of a lot of the stuff she did. And yeah, it kind of sucked that, especially because she put Pearl in a lot of danger to
Right.
try
And
to
I
save her.
realized that she was the one that put her in that pit with those other bodies.
Yes, yes, yes. There was that. So then you're just like, what in the world, But yeah, I agree with that, Mike. So to finish this off for our project this week, would you recommend it? Would you tell someone to skip it, or would we throw this one away?
Oh, I would absolutely recommend this one. I would just say that it is a fairly long one. The volume, like I said, is 200 pages.
Yep.
But it's really engaging. It's really engaging. And if I didn't have a 1-year-old, I probably would have finished it before today.
Yeah.
But it's really good. Like I was like, man, all right. I was already kind of like, man, Stephen King is in this? Okay, cool. Like I know Scott Snyder. All right.
Hmm.
I will always read anything Scott Snyder has to put out. Um, but I didn't know that Stephen King wrote comics. My Stephen King experiences with his novels.
Same here.
And so to see this kind of effort put forth uh is amazing. I absolutely love it. Um I would totally get this. I know that Comixology has gone through some changes over the last few years. So if you do read it on here, I will say that I did not have any problem with Comixology. I know people were talking about like navigation and I think more with like library and certain things popping up and how to search for stuff. Uh, but as far as the actual reading experience, I've been reading it on my iPad, and it's been pretty seamless. In fact, I kind of enjoy this reading experience over like Marvel Unlimited, or like I haven't read anything on DC Unlimited in a minute, but uh I actually enjoyed this one, I think, more as far as the experience goes on Comixology than I do on Marvel Unlimited. Uh and the story, like I said, the story is just very engaging. So yeah, I absolutely recommend this.
Yeah, I used the Kindle Reader myself, and I was able to zoom into panels and read it. I was concerned about that because I knew that was an issue before. I didn't even know if Comixology's Reader was still available because I thought they have now became one or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there was some kind of, I forget what the main issue was, but I know it was something with the reading. But it's got a, so like for this app, for the Comixology app, it's literally you can tap on the middle of the screen and you can go throughout all your pages. You can tap on the middle of the screen and then double tap and it'll just do panel by panel, which is how I read. Um, or you could just do it by the whole page. And so, like I said, I do a panel by panel. That way, I don't have to see what's coming uh,
Yeah.
beforehand or after the fact. But yeah, yeah. Like I said, I enjoyed the book and I enjoyed the experience on Comixology.
Yeah, same here. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend the book. It's definitely a book I would love to see in another type of media. But regardless, it's one of the few books that had me uh, from start to end, just had me with my eyes glued to see what happens next. And like you said, it is a more heftier first volume. Because think about it, 5 issues, 32 pages, usually a whole bunch of quite a few ads. It would get dwindled down to under 200, but this one was a thick 200,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it,
no ads, no nothing.
no
It's just
ads, and then a
yeah,
whole lot more of the development side, which was dope.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I hope to finish it as well. So we'll see what happens in the future. All right, and so next week we'll have another project for you. It's Michael's turn to decide what it is. And here's the thing: that project can be video games, it could be something we're reading, something we're watching. So like for example, we could revisit Terminator 1 because Halloween is coming up and discuss it, or we can say, hey, let's play a couple levels or whatever particular game and then have a deeper discussion about that. But we'll let you know soon what the next project for next week is going to be. All right, Michael, so we're in the end of our show. I would say we got about 5 minutes left. So let's go just through some upcoming stuff and then we'll go ahead and shut it down for this week. All right. So just to let everybody know, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 coming October 28th to all systems. Resident Evil Village Shadows of the Rose coming to all systems. Resident Evil Reverse is coming, Christmas. Halloween is right around the corner, fellas. So, you're going to get a lot of Halloween stuff this next coming week. Is coming out and it's on all systems. Star Ocean, my JRPG fans, the Fine Forest is coming out. I'm a big Star Ocean fan, so I'm super excited for this. And then the PlayStation adaptation now for PC, Sackboy, A Big Adventure, hitting October 27th. Mike, is there anything next week you looking forward to? Is there anything sale wise or what you got?
Yeah, let me just mention real quick for those that have their Nintendo Switch. Big release came out on their 64 emulator was Mario Party 1 and Mario Party 2 are now out. And just to keep an eye out at some point in time in the next couple of weeks or in November or middle to late November, GoldenEye will be out. And that's even for the Xbox Game Pass. The unfortunate thing is that for Game Pass, there is no split screen co-op. But other
that's
than that,
horrible.
yeah.
That's
So
all horrible.
yeah, it's a whole again licensing, and that's why GoldenEye took so long to come out. But to get the full experience, I believe you have to play it on the Nintendo Switch, whereas the Game Pass is going to have some limitations.
All right. And so one last thing I also want to mention, Steam is currently holding a sale. And so we have games like Deathloop, which I really want. It's now priced at $23. Prey for $8. And we have Dishonored as well for $8. And Dishonored 2 Dishonored 1 is like $6 and Dishonored 2 is $8. So there's some titles there. And I know Michael will saying some good things for the Steam Deck coming soon. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and lead us out for this week?
Yeah, just be sure to keep up a lookout for some of the other videos we got posting. Subscribe and like, hit that notification bell, of course, and then check out some of the gameplay videos that we've had going on. This week we're gonna have one that's mostly indie games, or it's pretty much all indie games on the Steam Deck, but these games could also be applied to any of the other systems. I just prefer to play them on the Steam Deck. So I think that's gonna be pretty much it for now. So keep your imagination up, get out there and read, watch, play games, and we'll catch you in the next one.